Not that long ago, I tested a few versions of the new Mac Mini and finally settled on the M4 Pro. The only upgrade I got was the 1TB SSD. I was happy with this machine. So what does Apple do? They dropped the new Mac Studio. Actually, two of them. One with an M4 Max chip and another with an M3 Ultra. Now, the M3 Ultra Max Studio starts at $4,000 US, and honestly, I don't need it. It's way too much computer, at least for me. The M4 Max, on the other hand, starts at just under $2,000. My M4 Pro Mac Mini with a 1TB SSD cost me $1,600 US, so for only an extra $400, I could have bought a Mac Studio. I hate Apple's pricing ladder. So the question is, for a Final Cut Pro user like me, is a Mac Studio worth the extra $400 or $600 if you get the 1TB hard drive? Well, I bought one to compare, so you don't have to. First, let's quickly look at the specs of these two computers. My M4 Pro Mac Mini comes with a 12-core CPU, a 16-core GPU, a 16-core neural engine, 24GB of unified memory, and an upgraded 1TB SSD. The new Mac Studio is a base M4 Max model with no upgrades. It comes with a 14-core CPU, a 32-core GPU, a 16-core neural engine, 36GB of unified memory, and a 512GB SSD. Just like in my previous videos, I'm not going to compare benchmarks of these two machines. 1. It has already been done many times, and 2. The benchmark numbers mean nothing to me. What I'm going to compare is real-life performance using these machines for editing YouTube videos in Final Cut Pro. That's my main use for a Mac, so that's what's important to me. And hopefully, this is also what you care about. Now, I've had this Mac Studio for a few days now, and I actually edited the last video on it. Without direct comparison, I honestly couldn't tell a difference between the two. Both my M4 Pro Mac Mini and my new Mac Studio are amazing computers. But I wanted to put them side by side just to see how much better this one is. To test these machines, I actually used my M4 versus M4 Pro video. It just seemed fitting. In this project, I'm using a multicam clip in my main timeline with 3 video angles and an audio track. For video angles, my main angle is 6K shot in Panasonic Vlog. The secondary angle is a 4K file, also shot in Panasonic Vlog, and an overhead angle shot on an Osmo Pocket 3 in DJI D-Log M color profile. All 3 clips have Rec 709 conversion LUTs applied to them and some light color correction. My timeline consists of this multicam clip, screen recordings and B-roll clips, and quite a few effects, graphics, and animations. Just like before, I turned off background rendering and went ahead and deleted all my render files, just in case. The first test I ran, and this is probably one of the more important ones, is timeline performance. The M4 Pro Mac Mini did awesome here. My skimmer moved through the timeline flawlessly, and anytime I hit play, my project would start playing instantly and the playback was nice and smooth. Anytime I zoomed in on my timeline, the thumbnails would take a bit of time to load, but nothing overly noticeable. Playing my timeline at 2 times the original speed was nice and smooth. At 3 times the speed, the playback was still smooth, but the scrolling timeline started to lag a bit. 4x playback made this quite a bit more apparent. But still, timeline performance in this machine is nothing to complain about, especially for an unrendered timeline. The Mac Studio, as I expected, was flawless here. Timeline skimming was very responsive, playback was instant, and thumbnails loaded nice and quick. Playback at 2 times the original speed was perfect. Even with a speed at 3x, playback was nearly flawless. At 4 times the original speed, the scrolling timeline finally started lagging a bit, but not much. The M4 Max definitely performed better in this test, but the only reason it was noticeable is because I directly compared the two. Without a side-by-side comparison, the results wouldn't be so obvious. For my next test, I used the same project, moved the playhead to the start, and played the entire project all the way through. In my experience, sometimes playing for an extended period of time can make a computer fall behind a bit, and playback starts to suffer. First, the M4 Pro Mac Mini. Both playback and the scrolling timeline started out playing perfectly. I did notice the scrolling timeline stuttering a bit during transitions, but the viewer playback was still nice and smooth. At about the 6-minute mark, the scrolling timeline did start falling behind a bit, but nothing major. But in all honesty, for a project like this, with multicam clips, a bunch of effects, and no rendering, the Mac Mini did really good here. The M4 Max Mac Studio, once again, was flawless. It played my entire 10-minute project all the way through without missing a beat. I expected at least a little bit of a stutter, but nothing. It was flawless. My next test was exporting this 10.5-minute unrendered project using the Apple device's 4K preset. This is my go-to export preset for YouTube because it retains amazing quality, the file sizes are reasonable, and most important of all, YouTube seems to process these files really fast. The M4 Pro Mac Mini exported this unrendered project in about 11.5 minutes. Considering the complexity of this project, 11.5 minutes is actually really good. I tried the same export on the M4 Mac Studio, and holy the Mac Studio exported this exact same unrendered project using the Apple device's 4K preset more than twice as fast, only taking 5 minutes and 23 seconds. I was expecting it to be faster, but I did not expect it to be twice as fast. That's impressive. Now, back when Apple used Intel chips, and even the early Apple Silicon chips, rendering a project significantly increased export speed. I tested these two machines to see how long it would take to render this project, and whether or not it would make any difference with the export speed. First, rendering this 10.5-minute project on the M4 Pro Mac Mini only took 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Not bad at all. After rendering, I tried exporting the rendered timeline using the same Apple device's 4K preset. Unfortunately, rendering did not help the export speed at all. In fact, it was almost identical, once again exporting my timeline in just over 11.5 minutes. I tried the same thing on my new Mac Studio. Rendering my 10-minute timeline was slightly faster, only taking about 2 minutes and 13 seconds. The export speed, same as the Mac Mini, did not change. It exported slightly faster, taking only 5 minutes and 19 seconds, but that's close enough to say the export speed was basically the same. I find with the newer M chips, you really don't need to render your timeline at all. You might have to render a few small parts on the Mac Mini if you want flawless playback, but I strongly recommend turning off automatic background render. Next, to test the neural engine in these machines, I used the new features added in the last few Final Cut Pro updates that utilize machine learning, smooth slow-mo, and the new magnetic mask. First, I used magnetic mask to track and rotoscope a subject in my next clip. The M4 Pro Mac Mini analyzed and rotoscoped my 16-second clip in about 47 seconds. The Mac Studio did the exact same clip quite a bit faster, only taking about 36 seconds. Playback on both after removing the background was nice and smooth. Speaking of smooth, I tried the smooth slow-mo feature next. With this, Final Cut Pro analyzes clips shot at regular frame rates and uses machine learning to make additional frames in between, allowing your clip to be played back in slow motion. And this actually works amazingly well. I used this feature on a 4K clip shot at 24 frames per second and slowed it down to 25% of the original speed. The M4 Pro Mac Mini analyzed my 6.5-second clip and made up additional necessary frames in about 29 seconds. Playback, however, was not very good. Not until I rendered this clip, then it was nice and smooth. The Mac Studio took about the same amount of time to analyze this clip, coming in at about 28 seconds. The difference here is playback was buttery smooth without rendering. It seemed like no matter what I threw at this Mac Studio, I could not make it skip a beat. So, to answer the question from the start of this video, whether the Mac Studio is worth $400 or $600 more, yes and no. If you're contemplating between the two, I would definitely go for the Mac Studio. Besides being considerably faster than the M4 Pro Mac Mini, the Mac Studio also comes with a built-in card reader, a 10GB Ethernet port, and 2 USB-A ports, which are really handy. With the Mac Mini, if you want USB-A ports or an SD card reader, you have to buy a USB hub, and a 10GB Ethernet port will cost you another $100 from Apple. If you consider this, the price difference between the two gets even smaller. But if you already own an M4 Pro Mac Mini, should you upgrade? No. The Mac Studio is faster, but only doing things you don't do very often. Exporting was a big one, but at least me, I spent hours, if not days editing a project and only minutes exporting it. So, looking at the big picture, even being twice as fast doesn't really save you that much time. If you have the M4 Pro Mac Mini and you use it to edit normal videos without using crazy camera codecs to upload to YouTube, this machine is amazing. It'll be good enough for a long time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.